I'm Mendy Stoll with the Sweet Seat, and I'm here with David Sonntag from Decibel Events, and I'm so excited for you to get to hear his story. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I can't wait for the listeners to hear from you directly. Can you start by telling us a little bit about you first? And then I've got a ton of questions for you.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me, Mendy. Dave Sonntag with Decibel Events. I am a event producer, business owner, dad, husband, and overall hospitality guru, amongst other things. So love what I do and love sharing the story and sharing it with people.
So I know, yeah, I love how you threw in that you're a dad. That's such an important role, and people forget that oftentimes when we come on. I'm like, don't forget the family. So tell me, how did you come to start Dustbowl Events, and when was your aha moment of like, oh my gosh, we're a real company?
Sure. Sure. I started Decibel back in 2007. So we're almost 20 years
Okay.
in. But I actually started my career up in DC at Fleischman Hillard, the public relations firm. So I was handling events for Fleischman Hillard. We were doing press events, press conferences, bus tours, anything that could generate media. And I loved it. I loved that part of my job. I did not love writing press releases and cold calling media and the other things that go along with actually having a job in public relations. I sat around thinking to myself, what is this it? Is this everything that the career is meant to be? You love half of it and that's about the best you're going to get. And decided, no, it's not what I wanted to do. So I ended up leaving there and starting Decibel, starting small, solopreneur, couple clients, and just kind of really grinding with bringing my love of events to the clients that I had. And it was probably a few years that went by and went through different iterations of Decibel. So went through a couple different locations, tried different things. At one point, we had a retail spot and a warehouse and a forklift. And I remember thinking, is this what I want to do either? Having a forklift and stuff. And it took some time to really go through those different iterations of Decibel. And I think looking back, when realized it was a question about, when did you really know? I think it's when clients come to us and have been our clients for years and have been there. And we go back and look at what we've done and realize like, man, we have a history with not only ourselves and our team, but our clients. I think that's when it really hits you that, man, you've been doing this for a while and it's working.
Yeah, and I love how you said, we had iterations because the entrepreneur journey is usually not a straight line. And people, if they've never done it, I think that they start and they don't realize that it's not a straight line and it's a journey of figuring it out. And so if I was saying, "Hey, David, pull back the curtain. Give us a peek into what goes into producing an event because I'm sure people have no idea. They see the finished product and they have no idea what you're doing behind the scenes to make it happen."
Sure. Especially for the events we do, it could be months of planning. So for our largest events, we start planning the year ahead. And that's when it really starts. When we wrap up the event the year before, and sometimes even overlapping, we're already in the planning phases for that next event, for that same event the next year, that annual event. So it months of work of really looking at what the client wants to do, what their goals are, how they want to accomplish those goals, and then breaking it down into the different pieces that have to happen in order for this to be a success. And so we really concentrate from our side on the operations, the logistics, not as much in terms of the marketing and the audience facing piece of it, but really those block and tackle elements that go into it. So everything from starting with the venue contracts to understanding what the AV is going to look like, how it's going to be built, how it's going to be rigged to the venue itself, and down to the minutia of weight limitations and schedules and what time trucks get on the dock to what food's going to be served and when that has to be prepared. When we get security involved, when we have presidential security, we have to figure out what time the Secret Service is going to screen the hotel staff so they can get in, and we make sure that they come to the front of the line so that our banquets team can start cooking the breakfast for everybody that's behind them in the line for security. So it is a lot of coordination and a lot of logistics throughout months of planning.
So interesting. When we talked before, I loved what you said about how I asked you, why are you different? And you were talking about a lot of people put on events and they look at the aesthetics of the event, maybe, but they don't really talk about what the goal is and what the client is trying to accomplish. And I thought that was such a great take on how your approach is different and why clients would want you to put on their event. Will you share more with us about that?
Sure. That's one of the first questions we ask. And I have to give credit back to my time in public relations, back to my time at Fleischmann for learning the importance of this, the importance of why, the importance of that goal. It's so easy to get caught in the trap of you've got an event to plan, so you start to plan that event and you're going through those motions and you're going through the logistics and all of those things we just talked about, those operational pieces. But if you don't know why, you can't always provide the best counsel to your client because there's always competing elements from your budget to schedule to timing to other things you could be doing instead. And so knowing what their end goal is is so important in what your recommendations are for why you would make a different choice in AV, why you would make a different choice in schedule, in the talent that you have coming out, and even kind of what you spend your time focused on. So knowing that goal is such an important piece. So you can always kind of stop and think if you've come across a challenge or an element that you're not sure of, you can always kind of go back to that goal and think, okay, what is the purpose? What is our purpose here? What is the client trying to do? Why are we having this event? And then you can really have that help you focus on what the right answer is.
And can you give us an actual case study or an example so the listeners can really understand how that plays out in real life? If I come to you and I say, "Hey, David, I want to plan this event for my company. What is that going to look like? What questions are you going to ask me and what how are you going to help me uncover my goals and just some little inside nuggets that maybe people don't think about that makes you different?"
Sure. I mean, the easiest answer that is going to be the low hanging fruit that everyone's going to go to is ROI. What's the ROI for my event? That's what everyone wants to know. It's super easy to understand, but it's not necessarily that easy in practice. So, what we start asking a lot of our clients is when we ask about goals, it's got to go beyond ROI. So there's definitely a financial figure there, per client, per attendee. What's the cost? That's definitely something that procurement looks at. It's something that the CFO looks at. It's different when you start looking at it from a brand focus or from a media focus or from sales focus. What happens in that room is much different. So if you're looking at trade shows, for instance, and I know this is a little bit different than events in particular, but trade shows specifically, if you are writing contracts on site, you're not only needing to find the right individuals there, but you're going to need to make sure that you have a room off to the side where you can negotiate that contract or that deal. So that is something that comes out of what your presence is there. At an event, if it's a B2B event and you've got, let's say, employees or C-suite executives coming in from different business units or different countries, being able to set up the event to allow for networking time, to allow for that interpersonal time of folks that don't get to see each other. Are they able to discuss, current business is happening or potential new business that might be collaborative between their two business units? Those are items that aren't necessarily directly related to the ROI of that actual event, but could have future impacts. If you're looking at it from a brand perspective, if you're looking at it a little more business to consumer, setting up your event and encouraging photographs and social media and all of that is important. So not only just having a stage and some pipe and drape and a few screens, but what are those elements? What are those experiences that you're bringing? So then you do get that extra bounce from either your attendees or from the media that's coming there. You look at Dreamforce from say, a perfect example of, they are a CRM, but their events are that experience that you go to and they really nail that. So it's a lot more than just that number on paper. And you really want to understand what those goals are.
I love that you shared a real application. And I remember we went to a medical conference, and those can be a bit more dry. If everybody has their booth, and at one booth the CEO said, "Hey, come over and talk to us," and he had an Instagrammable moment at his booth, and he said, "Come take a picture with me." Well, it's the picture with the CEO, it's the picture with the Instagrammable moment, and his brand got a lot of social media play. So that's what I hear you saying is, we don't just, sure, we can give you four walls, sure, we can give you audio, but what you're saying is we're thinking beyond that. Yes, we want you to have your return, but we're thinking, how do we position you as a brand? Because ultimately those things do play out long term. If or giving somebody a space to write a contract, or that face to face. So I love that your company thinks beyond the obvious. And that is probably why your clients keep coming back to you. And I guess, on the other side of that, because people really, I know there's people that are going to listen to this and think, wow, David's got it all together. I could never be David. And really, entrepreneurship, there's so much work that goes in the dark, right? The things we do when no one's looking. People only get to see the shiny moments. And I guess I would ask you, tell us a story about one of your biggest challenges in growing the business, so you can inspire someone else of how it happened and how you moved through it.
Oh, it's so many examples. It's hard to find just one. I mean, going back to what you said about assuming it's a linear growth pattern and realizing it's the different eras. I think I only recognize that with experience and looking back in hindsight and seeing where we went in those ups and downs. When you're in it, you just don't see it. So it's really interesting. So one of those, like I said, we had the retail shop, had a warehouse for a little while. We just kept saying yes to things, kept saying yes to storage, and thinking we can do everything ourselves. I think that was one of the one of the challenges of being an entrepreneur. It's like, oh, I can do that myself. I can do that myself. And then biting off, not necessarily more than you could chew, but biting off more than is practical for your business, and realizing there's probably a better way, or there might be mentors out there that can help show you the way. So I think one of them is definitely looking out there and having mentors and seeing who's been there before that can help short circuit some of that. In my early days, I didn't look for the mentors, and I faced some of those challenges. And now, as the business matures, I seek that out. I look for folks that have been there that can help me learn the things I don't know. I think that's part of it, is being honest and knowing what you don't know, and knowing there are people out there that have been there and been in the middle of it. In terms of other challenges, we went through, I think everybody went through COVID, right? So we were super fortunate going through COVID, and the way from an events perspective we were set up. So some of those different elements that we had in terms of the contracts and some government work and all of that really helped us get through. But we tried different things during those eras to stay relevant and to stay around and make it through, which fortunately we did. And then just looking at the different aspects of events. So we've not always been involved in trade shows, but we now have a trade show practice. We have an events practice. We have a government practice. And so those pieces, seeing what you can try, what works, what doesn't. It's okay to fail on some of them, especially if you do it with purpose. So I like failing with purpose is sometimes
Yeah.
the best you can do, because hey, this didn't work, but you learned something, or you took a piece of that, and then you can grow from it. And so I think that's a big piece of it too.
There was a lot of nuggets in there. I heard watch your focus, protect your focus, right? Because sometimes I think as an entrepreneur, it's easy to say yes to everything. But when you say yes to
Very.
everything, you're really pulling your focus, and it's tempting. So I heard you say, like, protect your focus. That's what I was hearing is, it's, know your core, know what you're good at. But I also heard it's okay to try things with a purpose, which is true, right? You have to test things, see what works, do it intentionally. So heard the mentorship piece, which is so huge. Everybody should find a mentor. It shortens the learning curve. It makes the business, it makes you not feel alone. That's why I love when people hear this, because they think, gosh, I'm having a really rough day. Hey, David just reminded me, maybe I need a mentor. Or, yes, he had a rough moment during COVID, but he came through it. And I think COVID caused people to get really creative.
Yeah.
It, as an entrepreneur, you adapt or you die. And so it really forced some creativity.
Mhm.
And if we could give you a magic wand to solve one growth problem in the next 12 months, what would it be for you? Because every business has a sector, whether, and there's, one sector is like, maybe this is a sector we want. We have too much business. Here's the section we want growth on. What does that look like in the event space? And I'm asking this because I'm seeing some change in the event space. And I don't know if you're seeing it too.
So I think I have two different answers for you. So, depending on how many magic wands you gift me, this year our focus has we've been in growth mode, which is a lovely place to be, but we have so many staff that are excellent producers and project managers and production assistants. We excel at events. The challenge that I'm learning as we scale is the business itself. And so this is where when I talk about mentorship and for myself, I can plan an event. I want to say with my eyes closed. I've had the experience at it with being a business owner, with the business changing and having those, we'll call them the Taylor Swift eras at this point. We're at a spot right now that is new for me with size. And so for me, it's gaining the mentors and learning the SOPs and the everyday protocol for how you write different processes, get your processes in place so you can scale. So when new folks come in, you can hand them kind of a playbook and say, this is how Decibel does this. We certainly have what we call the Decibel way. It's how we do things. It's our ethos, but writing it down and then getting it practically in a plan is definitely something that I wish I could wave a magic wand and be done. But that's what I'm working on really hard right now with mentors and with our time. We're working really hard to get those processes in place. So that's it from a business perspective for me. From an event perspective, where events are going, I think we're seeing content nonstop. Everybody's asking for content. Everybody's looking for different ways of content. We're here on a podcast. That's what we're seeing as a nonstop feature that is not going to change anytime soon. Every client of ours that is large enough to build their own buildings is putting in a dedicated video studio and a podcast studio. So that's just part of the construction of new buildings now. For all of our mid-sized clients and smaller clients, we're bringing the studio to them. We're either setting up temporary studios for them or we're repurposing their event time to be able to kind of take the time they have with their CEO and all of the people that are coming to these events to record them and edit it and cut it for them. So it's been on an upswing for quite some time and it's not going anywhere. It's just going to keep continuing.
That was such a great share. So many people are going to benefit from that because it's a good problem to have of needing to write for systems and processes. It's a good problem to have, but people always think of it after the fact.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that as we let things live in our head as entrepreneur, you cannot scale at speed or with structure without it. And so I love that you said that. It doesn't happen in the dark. It's the mundane, it's the quiet, but those things are so necessary. And I guarantee you, you just saved somebody years of a learning curve by sharing that nugget by saying, we're growing and I know I've got to get this formalized. And I love how you talked about where the events are headed with the content. And it's so fascinating that companies are putting these sorts of content delivery systems in their building. That's the world we live in. I love that you shared that. And I guess on the other side of that, tell us a fabulous story of a great win that the business has had that you've because we really learn in the things that are challenging, but then it's always fun to celebrate the wins and somebody's going to hear something out of there too.
The wins are every day. I think everyday wins are important. We do big events and we have the celebration of the success of doing the event. So there is a definitive in the event world, there's a definitive moment where you've succeeded, you're complete with the event. The client goes up on stage and takes pictures, everybody gives each other hugs, and it's a huge success. And then you have the just vast low of taking everything down and then all flying home to separate places and you have those quiet moments where, you've been on site, you've been planning this for maybe 6 months or a year. It's been a success and you're alone in your thoughts. And so I love those big wins, but I also like kind of the daily wins, the wins of somebody telling you why you made a difference in their business or thanking you for, rushing something out because they forgot and were able to get to the warehouse and get them something on a plane and it made it in time. So I think any of those are wins. But I think the best thing we do in terms of feeling good is a small story I'll tell here. I'll take a minute to tell it. But one of the things we do at Decibel that I think really sets us apart, and we do it methodically, is after action reports. So after every event, after
Smart.
every, whether it's big to small, we'll do an after action report. So it could be a single page, it could be a 30-page report. It's everything. It's how planning could have been better, how we could have been better at Decibel, what the client could have done better, what the vendors could have done better, what the hotel could have done better. And it's a roadmap. And we do this for every show, and it's part of the element of Kaizen, that continual improvement. One of my clients opened up to me. We have our clients. We've had clients for repeat clients for years, and she opened up to me this past year and said that I actually made her feel terrible the first time we worked together because I had turned in this after action report and I didn't fully explain. She was new in the industry. I didn't really explain the reason we do it. And she just thought it was a 20-page document of me telling me how bad she planned the event and how terrible I thought it was. And after, working together 4 or 5 years, she felt comfortable telling me that that was one of the best lessons that she had learned in doing this. She talked to some colleagues and they kind of, when they realized it and talked about it, it was like, this is the roadmap for how you succeed in the future and how you make this better. And the whole reason for doing it is that we all want to improve. It's, the high tide raises all boats, and we want to everybody to be on that same page as we keep doing better. So I think, in hearing that story and realizing how I didn't explain it properly to somebody who might not have understood it, I think that is the way we really look to feel better about these events. And even when there are mistakes, you formalize it, you plan for it, you realize either the mistake or the challenge or the opportunity, and then you do better next time. And I think that's what we really love, is doing better next time. That's one of the things we love the most.
That is so, so smart. That's such a smart thing to do. It's a training. It's a training opportunity. It's a self-reflection and evaluation of what could we have done better, but it's a training opportunity. It's really a benefit. When I work with my team, I often send them strategy with a client, but I explain the strategy to them. I don't just give them the execution task because I want them to think critically. I want them to think, to have ownership, to think like an operator and part of the business, not execute the task, right? And so I love that you empower people by giving them that feedback. But it's funny that somebody new, I guess, you now change that protocol? Do you now say, "Hey, here's the reason why we're giving it to you"? I love that she didn't know.
For sure, there's definitely a little more explanation as we pass them along now, and we always have a meeting, and so we'll set up a meeting and go through it and everything. So I've learned, that was another key learning for me as well, and I'm glad I was told, which is just a really interesting thing that you don't think about when you're just in the process. And this is practical. We do it every time, but some of our clients are new to it, and so definitely helped me change my outlook and how I handle that.
Gift to her. What a gift to her, because the learning, I mean, once she understood the
Yeah,
application of
absolutely.
it, the learning was huge. And that's invaluable. It's a piece that she's going to take everywhere with her. I love that you do a review at the end. Huge. And it also is probably why you're at the level you are with your business, why you attract the clientele, why they keep coming back to you. Because, I talk to a lot of event companies and they think about, they don't think in this level. They don't think in the level of, the goal. They don't think in the level of the client long term, but beyond the ROI. I mean, they do a little bit, but it's much more surface, and they don't do evaluations after the events. You know, it's like the professional athlete that goes back and reviews their performance, watches the tape, and says, I moved a little, a little wrong here. If I would just tweak that." It's like you're watching your tape and you're getting your review. That's so cool. And I guess I would ask you, what trend are you seeing? We talked a little bit, but I would love to hear more in depth what trends you're seeing in the event space in general, and what you think will stay and what you think is kind of dying out, and what maybe you're doing to stay ahead.
Sure. That's a great question. I love that you're thinking that way. There are so many trends right now that are happening. I think your question is spot on about which ones are going to stay. I think that's where everyone should be looking and what moves the needle, what's going to stay around. I think, we touched on content. Content's not going anywhere. That's going to stay for sure. Post COVID, not to bring up COVID again because we've all had enough of it, but events aren't going anywhere. Convening's not going anywhere. Hospitality is not going anywhere. Gathering people together, that is a human condition, and we know that's staying. So everything we've seen is that whether or not it's for socialization or networking or business reasons, Zoom is not going to get it done. Virtual meetings are not going to get it done. Nothing changes being in person and having that connection. So, when you look at it from the foundational perspective, people gathering is going to happen. The content is going to happen foundationally. Then it becomes the techniques of how you get that across. So we're seeing a lot more in terms of when you're looking at AV specifically, there's a lot more LED happening. That is the way everything's going. It's happening so much and it's getting so inexpensive that we're seeing a retreat back to projection, actually, where some folks are kind of tired of LED and they want something like new and different or vintage. And so you'll see, depending on who your creative director is, and again, what your client's goals are, you might see some of that coming back in for a little bit of warmer touches in your aesthetic. We're seeing experiences, you say experiential. What does that really mean? That could mean anything, but we're seeing it play out in a lot of different budgets, from your banquets teams for how you do your food and beverage, how you do breaks, and what kind of interaction you can have with interesting and different food items and food breaks. You can pull some of these. It's interesting. You'll see some pull from weddings into corporate. You'll see some pull from corporate into weddings. You'll see a lot from the Oscars. You'll see the glam bot. I'm seeing the glam bot from the Oscars being done a whole lot. But again, that goes back to content. Other than that, we're seeing a lot of video choices. And so there's a lot of new technologies around video, between different capture techniques, different angles, different amounts and types of camera for how close you can get to the action, depending on what type of event you're doing. So for those records, or to get the audience kind of feeling closer and more involved. You're going to see more with drones. You're going to see more with smaller technology, nanotechnology, all of those pieces, more with audience interaction. I'm sure that AI is going to find a way into it. We haven't seen a whole lot of, we've seen art installations with AI. I haven't seen a whole lot of practical throughput from an attendee being on site onto stage just yet, but I'm sure it's around the corner. So that's one we're looking out for a lot as well.
So interesting what you were saying about, going back to kind of the vintage feel of video and stuff. And I think some of that is because we moved from people posting and having this very like raw feel when they posted, to like this very curated feel, almost like they were professional magazine. And then now I think we're seeing that reverse, where people want something that feels raw and very authentic. I'll tell clients, if we're doing their social media, I'm like, you're going to be tempted to have this very professional video, but just take your phone and do the video, because actually that will get more views, because right now we're over inundated a lot with technology and people want that raw, sort of warmer experience that feels more connected. And I'm sure, I guess the last piece of that I would ask you is, how do you think they have changed at your time before and then after COVID?
In terms of,
Just the events themselves, like, what did you see that big shift? I remember going back to events thinking, "Oh, it's so nice to be back in person." And I don't know if you saw a big shift from before and after COVID or not.
what's interesting, when we were in it, there was definitely the differences of how you manage that process during the COVID time. At this point, we almost saw the overcorrection for folks wanting to just get out. And so that was like, we saw a bump, right?
That's what
Kind
I
of
was wondering.
when that happened, we saw a big bump of everybody just wanting to do things. And now it's kind of gone back into, all right, let's look again, going back to goals. Like, what is our goal? It's not just like getting together. So we had that year or two where it was just, let's get everybody together. And now it's become a little more tailored in terms of budgets and everything. But there are so many other factors that go into it with, the economy, stock prices, what's going on with the oil prices. Everything affects the event budget, because marketing budgets are not kind of the main one for a lot of our clients. It's not their main focus. This is kind of a different way, a different pull from that financial element. So, that can affect what they decide to do. So I think that, the main one is we've definitively answered that people are going to stay convening. They're going to stay gathering. So that was nice to know. Once COVID happened and all of these virtual elements came in, there was a question of like, oh, is this just the new normal? Is this just how we're always going to interact? Is it always going to be a hologram? Is it going to be the Jetsons? Is it, is that what it's going to be? It's not. That human connection is there, and that's not going anywhere. So I think that is solidified. Like, no matter what comes out of it, we know that for a fact it's not going anywhere.
I guess as we wrap up, I would just ask you, what would you want people to remember about Decibel Events, and where can they find you?
Decibelevents.com. The best way to find us, Google, the way everybody finds everybody these days. So yeah, feel free to reach out and we're here to help. Again, it is about how events come together and how we can help our clients really execute the events in a way they want them done and in a way that is just, I don't want to say easy, but is done in a way that makes sense and
Meaningful.
meaningful, value driven, the whole thing. But yeah, we love it and we love to share that. I think even more than that, for anybody looking, for folks that are entrepreneurs, for folks that are in the business, reach out if you have questions about anything. That is one of the things I love to share is what we've done to get here, and always like to help others.
Yeah, we appreciate your time. I know you've given some great nuggets, so thank you for sharing that, and, we do appreciate you coming on. So, we can't, tell you how much that means. You actually had a lot of great nuggets in there. I know somebody's gonna hear that and go, "I needed that." So, thank
I
you for,
appreciate it.
yeah,
Yeah, man, thanks for reaching out. I really appreciate the time and all your great questions, and I'm looking forward to hearing more of your guests.
thank you so much. Hang tight for us here.
Yeah, will do.